I'm Jason Bradford.
I'm Asher Miller.
And I'm Rob Dietz. Welcome to Crazy Town, where AI-piloted hyper drones will drop brain implants down your chimney this Christmas. Now go stand in your fireplace.
Hi, this is Crazy Town producer Melody Allison. Thanks for listening. Here in Season 5, we're exploring false prophets and the dangerous messages they're so intent on spreading. If you like what you're hearing, please let some friends know about this episode or the podcast in general. Quick warning, sometimes this podcast uses swear words.
Language!
Now, on to the show.
Hey guys, before we start the episode today, I just want to run an idea by you, see if maybe you can help, okay? So,
Sure.
Part of my job at PCI is to fundraise for the organization.
Gotta bring in the dough.
Yeah,
Right,
you do
so-
a great job.
Thanks. Now I'm feeling condescended.
I'm feeling like the Jerry Maguire "Show Me the Money" scene, like where he's just yelling, "Show me the money!"
So I, always looking for new leads, came across this foundation. They don't have a lot of information on their website. Some foundations got a lot of guidance and instructions, details about their program activities. This website had 38 words. Literally, that's it.
Oh, that's sparse.
There's 38 words, yeah.
Yeah, on the website. But they seem to have a lot of money, right?
How do you get in touch with them?
Well, and some of the things that they talk about are things like
Yeah.
renewable energy research and stuff about space exploration, which we've been talking about on this podcast.
Yeah.
Not sure the way we've been
AI
talking
stuff.
about it.
Okay.
Well, so it's
Yeah.
the Musk Foundation.
Excellent.
Okay, Elon
The
Musk.
guy's rich.
Guy's got a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And he's been criticized, I think, recently because, most of the money's been going to OpenAI stuff.
Right. He needs to
through
spread
his
it out.
foundation. Yeah, you should spread
All
it
right,
out.
well, so if he's got such a sparse website, I assume at least half of it tells you his phone number.
Well,
or
that's the problem. There's no way to get in touch with them. There's no contact information. There's nothing, right? I'm trying to figure out how to get a hold of the guy.
Okay, I got an idea. Rob,
Okay.
he went to Penn and you went to Penn. Okay, maybe with the alumni association or whatever, you try to a next reunion, maybe he'll be there.
Yeah, I'll probably be having drinks with him at the next reunion, which I'm not attending.
Nor is he probably.
Can I just say, it seems to keep coming up that guys who have these problems, let's say, with their character went to the same school as me. Do I have this issue as well?
It's
This
a big
has been
school.
well established already,
big
Rob.
school.
Yes, you do have the same.
It's like claiming to be a New Yorker and then worried about all the jerks.
Okay,
in New
so
York.
your idea, Jason,
Yeah.
is Rob to pin him down
Yeah.
at some.
I'm not doing that,
reunion.
so I have a
Okay.
better idea,
Okay.
okay? So I think what we do is we record an entire episode about him. We're going to pivot from the guy we were going to do as a false prophet. We're going to do Musk.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can just,
That'll get us.
we can hashtag the crap out of him on Twitter. That's how we're going to
He's a
contact
raging
him.
narcissist. He loves any attention. It doesn't really matter.
And I'm sure he'll listen to this episode, and I'm sure he'll love it.
Yes.
And then he'll give us money. Awesome.
Okay, that's
Perfect.
great. It's done.
Let's
All right,
do this. We already
let's
know
do it.
so much about him. We could probably just do this off the top of our heads.
I'm pumped up. Okay, let me see. Let me try to remember his bio. Here it goes. The guy was born in South Africa. His father was a wealthy engineer with a 50% interest in an emerald mine.
I can relate.
Yeah, he was, somewhat politically progressive. He was anti-apartheid and into politics a bit, local government. His mother was a model and a Canadian. Great combination. But he kind of had an unhappy childhood. Apparently he wasn't very popular. He was isolated. He was bullied. He says he may have Asperger's and so, socially awkward, especially as young. And his father maybe wasn't so good to the family. There's some hints that he was abusive. And it recently came out that his father had a child with his stepdaughter quite recently. So it's a little odd and sketchy, kind of worrisome background there.
Is his dad Woody Allen?
Yeah, it's a Woody Allen sort of situation. Yes.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so his parents got divorced when he was young. His mom moved back to Canada. He lived with his dad, didn't really like it, so he wanted to live in the U.S. So he moved to Canada, which is, I guess, the closest he could get after high school in 1989.
So yeah, he's following along with me. That's when I graduated high school.
Did
So,
you also go to Canada?
Yeah, and the emeralds, though, we had sold that business by
You sold
then.
the mine?
Yeah, traded for a ruby mine and a sapphire mine. Yeah, so what he does, he goes to university in Canada for a couple of years, and then he transfers down to Penn.
Yeah, that's where you met him.
Where I did not meet him, although he did study physics and economics, so maybe we shared an econ course. We just took different things away from it, I would say. He was accepted then for a PhD program in materials science at Stanford, but he dropped out after 2 days, because this is what you do if you want to make a lot of money, right?
2 days?
Well, this is the roaring early 2000s.
Maybe he just couldn't find his classes
roaring
and just
90s.
gave up.
Yeah.
2 days.
Yeah.
Well, so he starts a business with his brother Kimball, along with funding from his dad that's called Zip2, the number 2. There's some allegation that he may have stolen this idea, but it was an internet city guide back in the early days of the internet.
Right. It's like a white yellow pages, but online, and big cities would help fund this stuff and promote it.
So he got a little bit of money for that, but his real money, initial money, came from starting PayPal with other folks, Peter Thiel, others that we know about. And then PayPal was purchased by eBay in 2002. He became worth around $200 million as a result of that sale. He's probably thanking Peter Thiel every single day for insisting that they sell the company rather than go public.
Yeah.
Because it would have probably lost tons of value when the boom went bust.
Yeah. So got a really good deal on that sale. And it's interesting. There's a fascinating history. I'll be brief about it. But around 2001, he became involved with what's called the Mars Society. So these are basically folks that are really interested in colonizing Mars, right? And he actually went to Russia to try to buy refurbished ICBMs, or intercontinental ballistic missiles, to convert them to rockets that would send greenhouses into space. I'm a little vague on the details, but it's all about working towards eventual space colonization.
Do you have to sign for that when you come back through customs, like that you're bringing back these ICBMs?
Well, that didn't work out. They didn't.
That's probably why he got stopped at the border with the rockets in his backpack.
He forgot to claim them.
They couldn't strike a deal. But here's what's interesting is that Musk founded then SpaceX with $100 million from that eBay sale in 2002. Of course, nowadays, SpaceX is known for having these partially reusable rockets, has large contracts with NASA to serve the International Space Station. It actually docked with that in 2012. And of course, the satellite internet service Starlink. This is pretty incredible. He goes from being an internet city guide to internet banking and transaction services to a space company.
Right. And we haven't even gone to the stuff that he's really best known for, and that's Tesla Motors, right? Which was founded in 2003 by a couple guys, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning.
Never heard of these people, but they're the genius behind probably the special sauce in Teslas, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but who cares about those guys? In 2004, Musk helped it go through new rounds of financing and became the majority shareholder with just a $6.5 million investment.
Chump change.
In 2021, Tesla reached a market cap value of $1 trillion. And that's what made Musk, for a period of time, the wealthiest man in the world.
There's a lot of gyrations in the value of his company, somewhat because of what he does, which we'll get into a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the peak. And then somewhat oddly, he ends up buying Twitter in 2022, right?
Well, he was trying to save it and make sure it was a great platform for free speech.
Yes, exactly.
For his free speech.
Right, exactly. It's
all right, well, let's get back to his personal life just a little bit. He has 7 children from 3 women, and I guess aligning with that, he's said that he's worried about underpopulation here on planet Earth, even to the point where he goes after Jane Goodall for her concerns about overpopulation. I want to talk about that just for a sec, because you go after Jane Goodall, you go after every single one of us. We're not. This is not going to stand.
I think she should send some of her chimp friends after him.
Yeah. Has he not watched Planet of the Apes?
Seriously.
So what happened is this video was played at a Davos conference where Jane Goodall said these words. She said, we cannot hide away from human population growth because it underlies so many of the other problems. All these things we talk about wouldn't be a problem if there was the size of the population that there was 500 years ago, which was about what, Jason?
500 million.
Okay, yeah. So if we had 500 million instead of 8 billion, we could deal with our footprint issues better. Well, so Elon responded to this, of course, via Twitter. He says, "This philosophy is the death of humanity."
So 500 million humans is the death. That's what I don't get. What does he mean? Okay, it's just a little absurd. Like,
Because
over the top.
we're not going to take Russian ICBMs into space, I guess.
Yeah.
Now, the guy's had a bit of a fall from grace, I would say, in recent months in particular, especially with liberals after, buying Twitter. But I think it's important to remember that for a while, he was widely considered like the greatest mind sort of CEO entrepreneur.
Yes.
Since probably our buddy Jack Welch, who we talked about earlier. Like, there were famous Elon trolls, on Twitter. Anytime you criticized Elon for anything, they would sort of go after you. You had huge following of people who thought he walked on water.
Oh yeah, I mean the hero status that his character kind of was built around is amazing. He was kind of the source for Tony Stark, the
Iron Man.
Yeah, the Iron Man movies. And to the point that he actually had a cameo in Iron Man 2. It was really awkward, I thought. But I guess to be fair, Bill O'Reilly had a cameo in that movie as well. So maybe it's not that great a thing.
Well, it turns out, similar to Jack Welch, he's not a very likable character. Apparently, he displays tremendous hubris, narcissism. He yells at employees, expecting these 80-hour work weeks. He actually calls himself somewhat proudly a nano manager. Yes.
So he takes... A micromanager is just too big.
Yeah.
You can actually see a micromanager. A nanomanager, you can't even see them.
No, it's like the Kurzweilian nanobots.
He's in your bloodstream.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Telling you what to do.
Yeah,
Interesting.
exactly. Yeah, invading the whole body with nanobots.
Calls himself a nanomanager.
Yes.
Wow.
And I mean, he demonstrates some of these traits all the time. I mean, he plays this game of being overly confident, and then he overpromises and underdelivers, and he has no apology, no reflecting. Oh, maybe I was wrong. So
prove it.
Yeah, an example is we were watching this video where he's got 8 years of telling whoever will listen that they're going to have autonomous driving Teslas all over the road, and it's amazing. The whoever put this video together, we'll put a link to it. But each year he's like, yeah, we're 1 year out. Oh, don't worry. It's next year. Teslas are going to make it from New York to LA autonomously. Nope, no worries. Autonomous. And it's just wrong every time.
Apparently, this absolutely drove the engineers at Tesla completely bonkers. Again, his poor staff is sometimes just being driven nuts by what he does when he's not being handled and he's just letting loose.
Now, he also sometimes does strange and controversial things. I think that there's I would say probably a real entitlement that he embodies, a sense of privilege to be able to do some of these things, and kind of like, he's thumbed his nose at the FCC at times. He's done all kinds of stuff. I mean, he went on Joe Rogan's, show and smoked pot with him and dropped some real nuggets of quote unquote wisdom. He had this thing where I think when he offered to buy Twitter, he was putting it at like a $420 stock price or something like that. Was that not Twitter?
No, he was offering to take Tesla private. And so he said he had a deal maybe worked out where he was going to sell Tesla stock for $420 a share,
right,
from a private buyer.
A little wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the.
I don't know. 420 has something to do with
pot,
with marijuana.
I don't know why. We just had that day a few days ago. We're in April.
You're so old if you don't know what we're talking about here.
But apparently this was like he was trying to make his girlfriend laugh, and so
he got in trouble, I think.
Right.
It messes with stock prices. Right?
Oh, everything chaos. But
this is what I mean
SEC comes in
about the entitlement. He's adored. People say, "Oh, that's Elon being Elon" or whatever, and he gets away with doing shit like this.
Right.
Well, and it's one thing to say someone's narcissistic, but it's another to show some behavior that really drives the point home. And my favorite is just on Super Bowl Sunday this last year. Joe Biden, you heard of him, the president of the United States, right? He goes on Twitter and he has a tweet about rooting for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Were you rooting for the Eagles too?
Nah, not really. I mean, I'm sadly still an Atlanta fan.
Okay,
but they haven't sniffed a Super. Whatever, sports.
Well, they sniffed it all right, and then they got yanked away from them. 28-3.
So Biden puts out a tweet that gets engagement of like 29 million
That's solid.
impressions. Yeah.
Solid.
Yeah, he's a president of the United States.
But
We got a
Musk,
following.
Musk puts out a tweet, similar vein, kind of rooting for the Eagles, and he only generates 9 million. Right?
That's not bad.
Not bad, but that's not going to cut
It's not 20. There's 9 million. Just follow me for a second,
Right.
Jason. Is less than 29 million.
By 20 million.
We forgot to warn our listeners that math was coming
Complex
here.
math,
But
yeah.
So what Musk gets really pissed off, and he flies back to the Bay Area.
Private jet. He's got a own jet, by the way.
Pulls together a team
Yeah.
of roughly 80 people. Gets those engineers who you talked about probably, Jason,
This is like Sunday night.
to address this unacceptable flaw.
Would he have them all individually like his tweet? Is that what he did?
Yeah, that's a start. So yeah, now he's got 9,080,000, right? But no, he had the engineers pull an all-nighter. They were threatened with being fired if they didn't fix this engagement issue. And what they did is they made his tweets 1,000 times more likely to show up in your feed. And then there was kind of a backlash to
Right.
this. 'cause the
Everyone
next
just
day,
seen Musk's
it's like all Musk, yeah. And so they just scaled it back a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So he's still many times more likely to have his tweets
Right.
show up than
Right.
anyone else.
Okay. Yeah.
That's
You're just jealous, Rob. You wish you had the same.
And he does all this bizarre stuff on Twitter. He's, you remember this situation where this QAnon guy, this just absolute off the charts nutty QAnoner, breaks into Nancy Pelosi's place in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And she's not there, but her like 80-year-old husband, Paul Pelosi, is getting attacked by this guy. And is hurt. He has to go to the hospital. It's scary, right? This is the third person in line to the presidency, and this nutter comes in. Well, he kind of passed on this bizarre conspiracy theory that Musk did that this guy was Paul Pelosi's gay lover. Just ridiculous, right? So it's kind of sad.
But look, this is what we're saying. Musk likes to throw his weight around, troll people, do all kinds of things. He's messed with the valuation of different cryptocurrencies. He, opens his mouth and says, "Oh, I like this one," or "I like that one."
You better not say the one he likes, because I don't want to. Don't mess with that.
Well, if we say it, it'll bring the value right back down.
Dogecoin. And he's not the one who sort of created this, but Tesla and SpaceX events, they can kind of seem like cult worshipping sessions,
Oh, totally.
Cheer when the rocket blows up.
Did you see that?
Progress. Right?
Did you see that?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
I was cheering too, but for a different reason, probably. Yeah.
Well, I had to bring into this conversation what I think is one of the most spectacular scenes from his recent history, and that's the Thai cave rescue.
I saw that documentary.
Well,
oh my gosh.
The actual rescue is got to be like, it's the most amazing thing. I listened to this incredible podcast on it, and the rescuer, the guy's name, Harry Harris, he's a scuba spelunking pediatric anesthetologist.
Perfect. There's like one of 8 billion people in the world with those qualifications.
Well, I over there at Penn, I thought about studying to be a scuba spelunking pediatric anesthetologist.
Some schools allow you to make your own degree.
Yeah. You can put that in your LinkedIn profile and see what kind of hits you get.
The Department of Scuba Spelunking Pediatric Anesthesiology is a little underfunded right now.
Yeah.
It's coming on after this cave rescue. So this guy kind of heroically rescues this Thai soccer team from the flooded cave.
He had a team of people, but he was the head honcho, I guess.
But Elon wanted to be the hero. He kept inserting the SpaceX and Boring Company, which we'll get to in a bit, with the idea of, let's build a miniature submarine and run that through the cave. And on the day before
Let's build it. It doesn't exist yet.
Right.
Let's build it. They're basically stuck in this cave they can't get out.
Right.
Let's just take our time to build one.
Well, so
they built it fast.
Yeah, but on the day before the team was rescued, this is what he tweeted. Just returned from Cave 3. Mini sub is ready if needed. It is made of rocket parts and named Wild Boar after kids' soccer team. Leaving here in case it may be useful in the future. Thailand is so beautiful. And he's like, over and out. The sub was not used at all. He's leaving it there in case in the future it's helpful. But and then after the team was rescued, there kind of ensued this bickering and media posturing, and he's trying to say we're very helpful. People are saying that was a media stunt, and
he shit all over this guy. And
Well, I don't know that he nailed him, but he definitely crapped on some of the people that were, got in a Twitter war, of course, and there was a defamation suit and all that. But it's just like...
These are the people that rescued the kids. Okay. Okay.
It does remind me a little bit of when we talked about Bill Gates and sort of the whole philanthropic colonialism, sort of the idea that we know best and we're going to come in and save and rescue
tech
people.
bros to the rescue.
Yeah, especially bringing that Silicon Valley thinking to the problem.
All right. So, okay, we've kind of done a little bit of a survey of his life and works.
Yes.
Probably not focusing on the things that he might highlight.
That's what we're going to do now.
But we should talk about, why we picked Musk as a false prophet. And I think the key thing here is he's an amalgam in so many ways of the species that we have in kind of this, and Jason, you could talk more about this, sort of this ultra-modernist group that we have of the false prophets. We're talking about the myth of progress, neoliberalism, eco-modernism, long-termism, singularitarianism, doomerism. These are the folks who fully embrace modernism. And it's interesting that because he's been so good of a false prophet across so many of those different categories, he's, in some ways you could argue he's easily one of the most influential people in the world, right? Yeah. And that's a testament to kind of how dangerous of a time we live in.
So he's kind of like the Frankenstein's monster or the $6 million man of false prophets. He's been cobbled together from parts of all the others.
Stitch this arm on, this leg on, or whatever.
Which is a better analogy, you think?
I don't know.
$6 million man?
Maybe $6 million man because he's like a cyborg. So,
it's more similar to the Tony Stark kind of Iron Man character too, right?
I'll go with $6 million man.
He would like to be a $6 trillion man.
That's what I was going to say. We've joked about this before.
$6 million for him is like...
I know. How quaint is $6 million to these guys now?
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned a lot of these sort of ideologies of share, eco-modernism and long-termism and all this sort of stuff. And the taxonomy, very important taxonomy, is really, of course, it's a fun way of putting these silly names on some dominant, but we consider non-helpful ideologies. So when I talk about the ultra-modernist group, I'm thinking of the species like the double downers, the complexifixers, the cyborgians, the industrial breatharian, and, which we'll get to, Rocket Man. And so we're going to sort of go through how Musk is representative of these different species in various ways, how he is this Frankensteinian $6 million man of some sort.
$6 million Frankenstein.
Yes. Okay. So we got into this when we talked about William McCaskill, right? The long-termism, right? Which is tied up in effective altruism, existential risk, utilitarianism, or whatever it is.
Yeah, basically, like, think so long-term about populating the stars and having as many humans alive and doing whatever they're doing.
Well, and that's where that Jane Goodall comment comes from, for Musk, right?
Yes. Yeah. And we mentioned this author, Emil Torres, that is really kind of helping put this together and showing this as sort of a set of ideologies that actually look like they're different, but they're very cohesive. And the philosopher Bostrom is really important in this. And Bostrom and Musk really share the same goals. And Musk seems to have been very influenced by him. In fact, Bostrom's paper called Astronomical Waste in 2003, Musk basically considered it one of the most important things ever written.
Well, he probably hasn't read the paper on the taxonomy, so
he hasn't gone to that yet.
I hope that...
Well, he's going to listen to this episode, and then he will hear about it. And,
yes. Yeah. Now, this is a little quick review of stuff we may have covered in the Kurzweil and McCaskill episodes, but basically what this philosophy does is it defines very narrowly that human consciousness, and humans especially being happy or pleasured, is the highest value that exists, okay, in the universe. Mm-hmm. And so it argues that our moral imperative is to maximize the value of the universe, ergo, the maximum number of happy humans living quality lives. And so then they make this next leap, okay? We talk about how it's very human-centric, of course. Mm-hmm. Then we make this next leap, and there's a back-of-the-envelope set of calculations that Bostrom goes through, just dealing with the Virgo supercluster of galaxies, which I guess we're part of as the Milky Way. Yeah. But if we just colonize our local galactic cluster, we're not We're not trying to
not overstepping.
Okay.
Just a humble stepping out.
We're not trying to get to another galactic cluster or anything. Don't worry about that. No, just our local supercluster.
Right.
It leads to a truly epic number of human beings. If you think about all the energy from all the stars that can be gathered to sort of energetically power all these lives.
Nice. No, this is where I get confused. Is we turning all those stars into computronium? Or are we...
Okay, Bostrom is a philosopher, not as a technologist. Does the numbers two different ways.
You and I had the same thought about computronium.
I read the paper. It's brief.
Okay.
It's shockingly brief and poor and horrible. And so it's fairly easy to critique because it's not long.
But go back to Kurzweil and remember how he explains computronium by holding up a rock.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, the Bostrom does this. He says, let's assume that we maintain our biological form and there's, X number of zeros, like 29 zeros of humans.
Yeah.
But if we can become like nano, whatever, then, you add another 10, 11 zeros or whatever.
Well, become fused with the singularity. We could be
more
physically embodied. We could also be virtual,
Yes.
Yeah.
So he runs the numbers both ways. And either way, it's very impressive. He says, either way.
A shit ton of people.
It's a lot of people.
Right.
So
but this is what I'm saying. I'm confused because Bostrom and these guys, they're like all about maximizing human happiness.
Yeah.
Kurzweil is maximizing computronium, the computing power of the universe, right?
Well, because each of those units of computronium is going to embody some sentient human-like consciousness that is being maximized in happiness.
Okay, so they're consistent.
This is the fourth time this season that I've started bleeding out of my ears while we're discussing this stuff, and I really don't like it.
It's so fun to talk about this stuff like it's a real thing.
This is what's amazing. This guy's from fucking Oxford, Bostrom.
Right.
It's like a video game.
So there's two key things that Bostrom makes in his paper. This is horrible little paper. Oxford philosopher. Oh my God, he's so horrible. It's so bad. First of all, don't go extinct. And he repeats that a number of times. Don't go extinct.
Got it.
Don't go extinct.
Got
They
it.
call this existential risk. And the second is colonize space.
Right.
Okay. But he basically says the recognized quandary by these folks is the technology we use to colonize space may cause our extinction. And so this is why Musk warns about the AI he helped to build through OpenAI, genetic engineering, to vastly improve human intelligence and longevity. This could also lead to super plagues. Nanotechnology itself can go out of control, and Kurzweil's worried about but
that's why we need the blue
exactly
the blue nanobots,
right?
Yeah.
So you look at his companies like SpaceX and Starlink, they're about getting us to Mars and then the next star system. And they're going to pay for it by making loads of money from governments and internet service sales.
Right.
All right. Well,
bringing it back down to here now. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So let's jump from long-termism to another piece, eco-modernism, admittedly very closely related. Uh-huh. But this is kind of your complexifixer species. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, complexifixer.
Thank you.
Yes.
And this is where you could look at this thing he unveiled recently called his Master Plan 3.
What were the Master Plan 1 and 2, do you know?
Yeah. Well, sequels are always better than the original,
okay.
So we're just going to stick with
Rocky
3.
3 was...
Yeah, Jaws 3D was incredible.
Amazing.
So, Master Plan 3 is something he unveiled at a recent Tesla investors meeting, and basically, the marketing for it is that we're going to develop a sustainable world, of course, tied to Tesla's products. And what it is he's promising a quick, affordable, seamless, and sacrifice-free transition from the world that we have that's dependent on fossil fuels to one that's fully sustainable. So just like some of our other guys.
Love it.
Right. Jacobson,
I love it.
Keith, Stuart Brand. These
Bill
are the
Gates,
ones.
No sacrifice needed, no consequences, none. It's all good.
Yeah, to put it in his own words, Musk says, there is a clear path to a sustainable energy on Earth. It doesn't require destroying natural habitats. It doesn't require us to be austere and to stop using electricity and sort of be in the cold or anything.
Oh, thank God.
So it's all easy, quick transition. So I don't think he would ever sign on to something like the Eco-Modernist Manifesto, but his name might as well be there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got him as a long-termist. We got him as an eco-modernist, complexifixer dude. Mm-hmm. He's also, very much channeling a bunch of the other false prophets we talked about around sort of the myth of progress, doubling down on the things that we're currently doing, neoliberalism. So, let's start where we started the season, Pinker, right?
Yeah.
Pinker and the myth of progress, right? So on SpaceX's mission page on its website, it has this headlines with this quote from Musk. He said, "You want to wake up in the morning and think the future is going to be great. And that's what being a space-faring civilization is all about. It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past. And I can't think of anything more exciting than going out there and being among the stars."
Now, I thought you said space-fearing, but you said space-faring?
Space-faring, not space-fearing. Yeah.
Because I'm kind of a space-fearing. I mean,
That's just because you saw Alien.
Yeah, I know.
I know. There's no oxygen out there.
That's really the issue right there.
Yeah, that's just a little thing we can resolve.
Well, I love
gravity, atmosphere, all those things.
I love piling on the quotes. So he shares this other view with, quote, "Either we're going to become a multi-planet species and a spacefaring civilization, or we're going to be stuck on one planet until some eventual extinction event. For me to be excited and inspired about the future, it's got to be the first option."
Right.
Yep. And this is where a little bit of the doomerism of these folks comes in. It's not the same as sort of like, well, what's the guy we cover on doomerism?
McPherson?
The bunker guy.
Oh, yeah, Barrett Moore.
Barrett Moore. He's not quite like Barrett Moore, but he's actually worried about these asteroids, and they're worried about
they're worried about existential
that sort of stuff.
I just like we've talked about false choice where he's giving two options. There's no other possible way. Like, here, I'm going to give you this option and that option, like you would do to a 2-year-old.
Well, in previous seasons we talked about Jeff Bezos, right? And when he launched his space company, where his idea is not to go to Mars, it's to mine the moon and then live
O'Neill colonies
in geodesic orbit around the Earth, right?
Yeah.
What much smarter.
Yeah.
Right. And his whole thing was the same thing. We're hitting up against limits of energy, and that means we're going to have to ration stuff.
No.
Unacceptable. That's not the vision we want to have. So there's that Pinker sort of like willful, absolute by the skin of your teeth, gritting, holding on to this idea that we're going to be able to always constantly progress, right?
Yeah.
And then we get the whole, I would say, like Clinton, Thomas Friedman neoliberal vision of private companies solving all our problems with the government, subsidizing their profits and socializing the costs, right?
Well, that's what electric cars are for, solving all the problems.
So Tesla's his most successful and well-known company, claims to solve the climate crisis through luxury electric passenger vehicles, right? So that's doubling down on this sort of unsustainable transportation system that we have. And at one point, Tesla's valued, this is just mind-boggling to me, as much as the 10 next biggest car companies combined. We're talking like Toyota, GM, Ford, Honda, BMW, Mercedes, a bunch of Chinese companies. Combine them all, it's valued the equivalent of all of the next 10, right? Kind of like the U.S. military compared to other militaries. But little understood is that a lot of Tesla's success was subsidized, right? It was subsidized through federal tax credits. So like they were able to keep the price of the car, lower in a sense because people would get this huge tax rebate for buying them. And I'm not opposed to the government playing a role of trying to foster this transition away from fossil fuel ICE vehicles. But the other thing, and this is even less well understood, is that they sell a lot of carbon credits to other automakers, right?
Oh, fascinating.
So in 2022 alone, they made $1.78 billion at Tesla selling carbon credits to other fucking gas-guzzling cars.
So basically, they're not doing anything then because they're just making room for internal combustion engine cars to be produced.
I think they got a lot of flack for that, right? It was like,
I don't know. I don't think people even really understand this very well.
There was some like, wait a second, Tesla, you're supposed to be about the sustainable transition. You're selling carbon credits to another. I think they got some flack, but
that's how, in a sense, we're subsidizing, right? Yeah. We're subsidizing private industry to supposedly solve our problems. And this is a guy who's espoused a lot of views about government's not well positioned to do things. He's a true libertarian neoliberal from that standpoint. But of course, like a lot of neoliberals, they actually want the government to have a hand in supporting them to do the things that they're doing. And one example of that is basically we're socializing the cost of them experimenting with self-driving mode in their cars, because they're basically, instead of them taking on the cost of trying to develop this technology in safe ways like private roads or whatever, they're just doing it on the road. Like they just take their customers, people sign up, you're an experiment, go have at it. Do you know what I mean? And their car crashes, some deaths have resulted.
Well, he's also channeling Jack Welch again. We've mentioned him, greatest CEO of all time. What he's doing here is he's really worried about we're going to run into labor shortages.
Right.
So rather than deal with economic policy conditions, you just make robots.
It's incredible.
He has the idea of getting the robot factories up and running. Again, he's not watching the right sci-fi movies. I mean, these.
Well, I would
has
say
he not seen Terminator?
A lot of their factories are already very robotic, but the leap they're making now, and it's called the Optimus program, but it's now called Tesla Bot, so they rebranded it, and it looks like a human. I mean, well, not exactly. I mean, a humanoid form with digits and everything, and all the articulation. Because Toyota had robotic manufacturing a long time ago, but this looks like a walking humanoid thing.
So, well, he's taking Jack Welch a whole step further. I mean, Jack Welch's thing was like rank and yank, right?
Yeah.
His is like, you breathe, you leave. Right?
Exactly.
Wow,
you're out of here.
You should become an ad man.
Oh my gosh, he's going to steal that. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go back again to the cyborgian sort of thing going on. This idea, like we talked about Kurzweilian singularity, and there's two other businesses that he's been dealing with. One he's very closely aligned to, Neuralink, and the other is OpenAI, which actually was a nonprofit that his foundation was mostly funding. So he sort of stepped away from that because Tesla's getting so much into AI, he didn't want to have a conflict of interest. But the OpenAI has given us that ChatGPT, so it really broke out this year and late last year, of course.
Yeah.
But Neuralink, not many people have heard of this company, but it's one of several that is developing what are called brain-computer interface. And you'll see the acronym BCI. And the goal is literally to turn humans into cyborgs. And after all, this may be the only way we can actually colonize space, is like, our meat suits aren't going to be up for the travel. So, and then this ties into the artificial intelligence work for a number of reasons. The robots and other systems that are required to do things like manufacturing, to get these self-driving cars, they need the AI. And it's also part of this sort of transhumanist framework that Kurzweil has talked about quite a bit, where we literally fuse with our computers, and our native intelligence then is augmented by supercomputers embedded in our brains via Neuralink. And you can watch these videos of the surgical implantation of Neuralink with this little computer sort of right in your skull. So they're working on this very, very fast right now.
What an optimistic vision of the future.
No,
that's progress.
I've already seen it, because we talked about Iron Man 3, Jaws 3, whatever, Rocky 3. Well, Superman 3, this happens.
Oh, in Superman 3.
The person gets turned into a cyborg. It doesn't end well.
Okay.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah. I'm just astonished that there's so many companies that he's actually involved with. And he's, as this nano manager, how the hell does he do that?
As a nano manager, well,
team of nanobots.
Maybe he's cloned himself.
Right.
He's already a cyborg. He's able to be in many places at once. I don't know.
It is an astounding story, and it is both highly disturbing and in some ways awe-inspiring, I would say. I'm pretty excited about introducing Elon Musk to the show, because he represents a new species. I'm really into like finding new species and being able to talk about them and see them. And it's pretty exciting.
Haven't noticed that about you.
And so he's a member of the species Homo phallus, which is also known as Rocket Man.
Sorry, it just reminds me of Life of Brian.
Okay.
This character. I'm not going to reference the name of it, but
the Roman guy,
his buddy,
yeah. Okay, that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, the Rocket Man species is not overly deterred by Earth's gravity well. Wants to move, the shipping industry way up there, and this is a species that's both freaked out by the reality of limits to growth, but only because these limits exist on Earth. So we need to transcend the planetary realm. And it has an astonishing combination of abilities to make oodles of dollars, run rocket companies and not appreciate the insanity of their plans.
Hey, earlier you said it's just limited to the supercluster, the galaxy near supercluster.
Yeah, they're trying to be modest.
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, this is a very rare species because not many have the hubris to pull this off. You've got to be both a billionaire and yet still needing to compensate for something, right? So the type specimen is actually Jeff Bezos. We've sort of talked about what he talks about, can't have rationing.
Well, and his rocket ships are clearly the most phallic as well. but look, we've been sitting here saying how Musk is the Frankenstein $6 million man who embodies all these different characteristics of a bunch of species. So I'm starting to wonder, Jason, if you're Jason Bradford, PhD, if this taxonomy is, maybe lacking. Maybe you don't have the right species for Musk here.
Well,
you want to duke it out?
Of course, your simple view of the situation is to be expected. You don't have a PhD, whereas I do. And, well, there are a couple ways.
I went to the same school as Elon Musk, okay?
Touché.
And Donald Trump.
Yeah. And
Damn it.
Okay, there are a couple ways this can happen, okay? One hypothesis is that the Rocket Man it's in the species complex I call the ultramodernists. I already mentioned this. And so the Rocket Man species is sharing ancestral characteristics, also known as plesiomorphies, with
or like
these other
superclusters.
He made that up.
Yes.
There's no plesiomorphy. Isn't that a kind of dinosaur?
Those are ancestrally shared characters.
It's a fear of dinosaurs.
Right.
People, oh God, just take an
I know.
evolution
Working
biology
with
course.
such idiots on your podcast here.
Now, the alternative hypothesis is that the Rocket Man is a hybrid species and that reticulated phylogeny is possible. And this isn't always about divergence. There's convergence. And Lynn Margulis brought this up, okay?
Yeah.
And
I remember when a reticulated python ate a goat, and then that was like a combined species, wasn't it?
Just as long as it took it to digest, I think.
some of the greatest changes in evolutionary history are because of this process. I'm just, eukaryote plants, lichens. All right.
Oh, yeah, like
Humans.
like mitochondria coming into the cell. Right?
Exactly. Okay, now you're following me, okay? So if anyone would like these two hypotheses to be tested, please donate to the special False Prophet Research Fund at Post-Carbon Institute. Thank you very much.
Can we ask Elon to fund it?
Yes, he should fund it.
He should.
Thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, then maybe you actually like the show. If that's true, then there's one very simple thing you can do to help us out. Share the podcast, or even just this episode. Think of 3 people you know who would get a kick out of Crazy Town. Use your podcast app to share it, or send a text, or go way old school and tell them face to face. Let's build a Crazy Town community so that one day we might be able to escape it. 3 friends, please share.
Before we get into a little more depth, a little more analysis on what's going on with Musk and why his ideas and the way he operates are so dangerous, I got a little lament to share. So, when we go about setting up a Crazy Town season, it's quite a ways before we begin recording. And I remember we were putting together our false prophet candidate list, and we had Musk on there. And at the time, it was kind of before his fall from grace. I was thinking like, we're sort of on the cutting edge of wanting to talk about the problems with what he's doing. And that's kind of, he's gone from hero to villain status pretty quick. So that's a lament. But I will also, on the plus side.
Yeah.
It's a good thing, because that maybe means people are starting to see through the false prophets. Maybe your taxonomy has made enough of the rounds to give people the vaccine that they need in order to...
It's by far my most influential paper to date.
Yeah, so we pat ourselves on the back. Maybe we're playing a little role in helping people see these false prophets.
I have another lament, which is, honestly, like, I feel we've scratched the surface on some of the things that he's been involved with. We haven't talked about his relationship to the Chinese Communist Party. We haven't talked about him ostensibly saying that he wanted to buy Twitter to make it a free speech zone, but actually censoring people there. Like, there's so much that we could get into with this guy that we just decided we didn't have time to do. So that's my lament.
Yeah.
Man's been busy.
He has. Pretty amazing, actually.
Here's a thought for me. Makes me think of our good friend Chuck Collins, who wrote a book called Born on Third Base. And that book was about his experience of having been born into family generational wealth. And in his case, Chuck gave up that wealth and has dedicated his life to addressing inequality, economic inequality.
So he went back to the dugout from third base.
I guess so.
We got to give a little explanation of baseball to our international crowd. This is basically, I don't know, it's an American and Japanese and
I think a lot of people probably
there
know
were
what we're
4
talking about.
bases, and 3 is 1 away from 4.
Yeah, like you're about to score.
You're
if you're on
about
third
to get
base.
points.
And anyways, I was thinking about this when it comes to Musk because we talked about his early career, right? He made his initial money with the guide website that he had, and then he fell in with the PayPal mafia, and they made PayPal, made a shit ton of money from that. And as I mentioned earlier, I think a lot of that was due to timing, in terms of when they sold it to eBay, had high valuation. So it's kind of like, he was born on third base. What his fucking dad's family came from, some mining, family, right? But beyond that, starting these companies, making a shit ton of money at a time where money was being thrown at everything. This is the dot-com boom, and he's really successful in that. And that gives you this idea in your head that you're fucking amazing. And so it's not recognizing the circumstances, your luck, your fortune that you're born into, that leads to this incredible hubris. And that represents Musk as an individual. But I think it's also a little bit emblematic of, in some ways, all of us who live in what you call high energy modernity, Jason, right? So we've talked about this a lot. Like, we happen to live and been born into a time of really anomalous
superabundance,
because fossil fuels primarily, right? Yeah. And so all the confluence of all these things that came together, and we talked about it when we talked about Pinker and economists and others who basically think that, like, because we've had this tremendous growth through this fossil fueled period of acceleration, that means that's going to continue forever. Do you know what I mean? And there's something special about us humans. So I think we could all look at ourselves in that way. Obviously that we have different levels of individual fortune, right? It's not equal across all of humanity.
Yeah, if Musk is on third base, I'm not sure I'm out of the batter's box yet, but that's a tough one. But I totally get that point. It's we're living at a really anomalous time.
And then the other thing that I was thinking about with him was that there's something really dangerous and very compelling for people when belief systems and self-interest kind of overlap, right?
Convenient.
And you could wonder, what's the cart, what's the horse?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? But when they reinforce each other, it's really hard to get out of it, right? So you look at a guy like Musk, who probably legitimately believes that he is a humanitarian, somebody who's spending his life trying to better the fate of humanity, right? He's got his vision, out into the stars. And he's done some good things. We didn't talk about what he's done with his help for the Ukrainian people with
the Starlink up there,
thing. So I think he really believes that in himself. But you look at, for example, what they're doing with fully self-driving cars, right? And I talked earlier about how they're basically experimenting on us humans, right? They're signing up their drivers for this program and this pilot project, and then the rest of us are part of the experiment too, because those guys are on the road with them. Those guys are out on the road, and basically, look. They need real world as much testing as they could possibly get to improve these systems. So they actually need crashes, near crashes, all these situations that kind of force the system to learn. So they're experimenting on us, and he says, this is actually about saving lives, because once all transportation is turned into fully autonomous, there are going to be far less car crashes. Look how many Americans die on the roads every year. He's not wrong about that. You know what I mean? So fine, we break a few eggs in order, to achieve that. And he probably convinces himself he's doing it again.
Ends justify the means.
But meantime, what's happening for Tesla is their market share, their cornering of the EV market is getting undermined.
Sure, other companies.
They're really rushing to basically lap others around the self-driving car technology, whether it's patenting it or whatever, cornering the market on that as basically a way of ensuring Tesla profits and its
right. There
might
might be other EVs out there, but only Tesla has that fully.
Right. So he's going pell-mell to do that, but he's convinced himself he's doing it for the greater good.
Greater good.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what I sort of see is that we have this bigger system that really feeds and rewards people who are these sort of power-seeking narcissists. And we really then turn to these people because they have so much power, they have so much influence. We turn to them to solve the problems that have been created by the system that they help create and that reinforces their power.
Yeah.
So there's this really bizarre feedback loop here.
Yeah, we talked about that feedback loop in the Bill Gates episode. Same thing. Create all these problems, then your philanthropy comes along to try to solve it all. And I think given the scope that we're facing of this predicament, this tendency of hitting these narcissistic, I'm going to save you techno people it's going to be even stronger. Like, we're going to want these salvation figures to come and save us. The problem with this feedback loop is they're going to keep taking more and more power all along the way, and it's going to become more and more dangerous.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious about, how somebody like Musk stacks up versus like Alexander the Great.
Oh, he's curious about that too. He wants to be in the number one position.
But in the past, you would have these state actors that would get huge and they would send armies across conquering, and the waste this was, right? So anyhow, it's kind of curious. I think it's the sort of same personality types, but in now a new context of our sort of global financial system, private corporations, high technology. But it's just similar patterns, maybe.
It is interesting to think about because, at the time of, you look at Genghis Khan, other kings or emperor figures, whatever, that's in a lot of ways post-democracy, pre-democracy, right?
Uh-huh.
And we live in a time now where ostensibly we believe in democracy, we believe in meritocracy, we believe in a lot more individual freedoms or whatever. But we've created an economic market system that really is it's about individuals. And so we have to rely on these individuals to rescue us or to achieve things rather than us doing something collectively.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how you
compare.
How you compare.
But we have talked about Richard Heinberg in the book Power, and we talked about this in our self-domestication episode about we would keep these bullies in check. There would be ways of ostracizing them, right, or killing them in groups, and we have prison systems, we have court systems, but it almost seems like at a certain point you get sort of too big to get checked anymore in today's world.
Well, that's what's scary. Now they're like lionized, right? I mean, and I actually, while you were asking, I don't know how we would compare him. I think we got to see if he crosses the Alps with a herd of elephants, and then we'll know that he's at least in the same league as Hannibal. Right?
Yeah. Right. I also find it interesting how, Bostrom's paper is called Astronomical Waste. And the argument he says is that it would be such an astronomical waste if we did not colonize the Virgo supercluster because the ultimate value potential here is just so phenomenal. And so what I kind of turn on this and I say, actually, I see it as a futile planetary waste, right? That we should be spending what remaining endowment we have on making sure that this planet is okay and makes it through the bottleneck of climate change and the biodiversity loss and
soil
decline and as our fossil hydrocarbon fiesta kind of winds down, what are we going to be left with?
What about the waste of all of the other beings on this planet? They're talking about the waste of human potential, but right now we're wasting the potential in the lives of millions of other species.
I know. It is really sad.
Well, I mean, you talked about the whole philosophy. It's all human-centric. There's no consideration.
Yeah. So here we are waxing sort of philosophically about some of these things. But in some ways, he's a very complex guy who manifests all of these different characteristics of all these different guys. But fundamentally, he's just a con artist too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, you just go to, I think his most laughable company is the Boring Company, which, maybe it's laughable because of the name, but it's pretty much a real failure, right? I mean, I don't know when this word hyperloop came out, but I remember seeing it and just being like, what the hell? He's just tunneling like that?
Yeah.
How is that a hyperloop?
Oh, in a vacuum tube, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little different.
Yeah.
Well, and we're not going to sit here and lampoon it because these other guys have done an awesome job. There's this guy goes by Adam something online with his YouTube videos. And he and another guy have also made a spoof video that the New York Times picked up, just making fun of the Tesla thing as basically being a choo-choo train. It's like,
the Boring Company now is using just Tesla cars, apparently, to drive on this Las Vegas tunnel.
Test track kind of
Yeah.
Well, so there are two ideas, right? There's this Hyperloop idea, which is basically we're going to shove people in a vacuum in a
tubes,
in a tube that's going to go across the entire country, and
Yeah.
you could get from San Francisco to New York, and
a few
Well, I
hours,
think
couple
they
hours.
were literally claiming LA
like
to
30
San
minutes.
Francisco in 30 minutes.
right, you just shoot you in a vacuum, right?
Yeah.
Like
Just
boom.
like at the bank when the old school used to put your check in a vacuum tube or
what
something.
could go wrong? Okay,
Right.
that's one idea. The other idea was like he was complaining about traffic.
Right.
You know what I mean? So his like solution to traffic was like, well, we'll just dig tunnels underneath the roads.
Yes.
And we'll send these. You just get out of your car. And they'll
pods.
send
Right.
your car down.
So, this is Musk pretending that basically an old technology, making a tunnel under the
subway.
ground is something new, some stupendous breakthrough in transportation, right? And
Yeah.
the guys that made the videos they're actually urban planners, mass transit, public transportation people, and they just lampoon how silly it is. He talks about, what if instead of taking an elevator with your car down, we just had the people get down to the place where and it shows them on an escalator. It's like, we could call it the hyper stair.
Right.
You mean like a subway?
Yeah, maybe just something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, con man. And the sad thing is that he's actually kind of sold this to some cities
Right.
as like the future of their transportation.
But then it goes absolutely nowhere, right? Because there's nothing behind it. And so I thought, if he can't even deliver on the idea of installing a subway, okay?
hey, Hyperloop, Tesla transporting super underground hyper activity. Call it by the right name.
I'm pretty down on the notion that we can become a multiplanetary species in any significant way. I think he's completely delusional about prospects to terraform Mars, for example. He says things about all we've got to do is drop nuclear bombs on the poles, and it will liberate a bunch of the frozen water, and that will create the greenhouse effect. And no, it won't.
Have you guys seen that board game, Terraforming Mars? Literally, it's a board game that you play with your friends while drinking beers. He must play it all the time.
Yeah. So you got to just wonder.
Let's turn this into real life.
How much of this is just a complete con, right? How much of his posturing on Mars is similar to what he says about the self-driving cars that'll be perfected next year, this Hyperloop. I think this is just, he's a grandiose narcissist. He believes his delusions, but we should not.
Well, remember when we had clear-headed, mathematically inclined physicist Tom Murphy on the program?
Yes.
He said straight up, he's like, colonizing Mars, you realize how many more orders of magnitude complicated that would be than setting up human colonies at the bottom of the Mariana Trench or at the top of Mount Everest.
Yeah.
And you look at how hard it would be to do those things, and it's like, yeah, we'll just colonize Mars, no problem.
But this is where the being born on third base and the whole idea of like the reinforcing thing between self-interest and belief systems is so dangerous, because like you're talking about terraforming Mars and going there. I'm trying to think about like what's the profit motive for that. I mean, obviously it's back to the days of colonization where you had private chartered companies basically colonizing the quote unquote new world. That's sort of a similar model, so maybe there's profit seeking from that. But it's like he believes he could do it because he's been successful with these companies in the past. And then he does have this legitimate belief that all this stuff is possible. And so he's pursuing these things. And then in some cases, he is a full-on con artist. And it's hard to parse them. Because like what he's doing with the Boring Company, telling people don't do public transit, instead do this fucking underground bullshit and then not delivering it, that's a straight up con. This other stuff, I think it really is part of a weird religious belief system that he has.
Yeah, I think so.
You guys are just naysayers. He probably can borrow that gauntlet with the Infinity Stones attached to it from Tony Stark and just snap his fingers and make all this happen.
But wasn't that about getting rid of half the population of the universe?
Hey, it's whatever you wish.
Isn't he what the opposite of that?
Okay, the insufferability index. We're late in the season. I'm not going to go over it in much detail, right? But 0's a very low score. High score is bad, like Tucker Carlson, who's having some trouble lately. So let's go through this, right? And score them on intentions, personality, ideas. Who wants to go first?
I'll take it because I want to be able to relax and hear how badly Asher ranks him.
Okay.
So intentions, I think the guy's pretty power tripping. Wants to gain a lot of power for himself. But on the other side, he has these delusions of grandeur about doing humanitarian things. So I'm going to give him about a 2 there. Okay, I'm not going to go over the top. Personality, narcissism, I think he's a big-time narcissist. He's getting a 3 there. His ideas, I think he's not quite at the way. I mean, some of his ideas are.
Right.
Colonize Mars, I think that's stupid. But, electric cars and stuff like that. PayPal, maybe that was, within the realm of something that could work. So maybe a 2.5 there. So I don't know. Help me out. What? So far I'm at what?
You're at 7.5.
7.5. Wow. And I just don't really like him, so I'm giving him another point. 8.5.
Okay.
Wow.
That's pretty high. What about you, Asher?
I'm going to go 7.5.
What?
It's similar logic.
Dang. Yeah. I thought you were going to give him a 12.
No, I mean, I think there's a little bit of nuance to the dude.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, always gray areas.
I have a little soft spot for the fact that he was probably abused and he probably suffers from some, personality defects that make it a little hard for him to relate to people. And he's a wounded human. And I think this is what's interesting about it is like almost all the people we've talked about this season, if you look into their history, there's something where you go, oh God, I'm sorry that happened to you. Right. So I in some ways I feel bad about having to bring this all up, but they're in these positions of power. And so what else are we going to do? Right. But I still
it's not like he's quietly minding his own business.
No. And he's not like he's getting therapy. So you have to call it out and you hope I think I want to hope for the best for him in the future, but I'm still going to give him an 8.
All right.
Every decision I've ever made in my entire life has been wrong. My life is the complete opposite of everything I want it to be.
If every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right.
So I talked a little earlier about this New York Times opinion video by the two Adams, Adam Kovacs and Adam Westbrook, and they have this pretty good bit in there. They talk about this term gadget bon, which they define it as futuristic transportation that looks cool but is unnecessarily complicated and is definitely not built for real people. And Jason, you've become fond of sending around when you find an animation or a graphic of gadget bon.
Hotel?
Yeah.
Flying cruise ships and stuff. So these guys, they're down to earth. They're kind of like regional planner types, urban transportation, and they tell you how to spot gadget bon. So I think this is a good do the opposite. So instead of buying into something like the Boring Company would present, you kind of use their filters. So this is what they say are the 5 warning signs that a mass transit idea is just a gadget bon, okay? 1, the idea is proposed by a billionaire. 2, the proposed transportation solution carries only a few passengers in undue luxury. 3, its main feature is also its critical flaw, like the vacuum tube.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, they actually said this has a high potential to create human confetti. 4, the vehicle looks like a futuristic sex toy. And 5, the vehicles are referred to as pods.
Oh, that's perfect.
That is good.
Yeah.
Yes. Musk has this complex-a-fixer element to his complex species, Frankensteinian, $6 million manish. Anyway, so in the Jacobson and Keith episode, I was talking about how to be skeptical of techno fixes, right?
Yeah, I remember it was really good.
So remember, I'm just going to review these real quick. Always beware of scale, take off the energy blinders, realize that time is not on our side, and that complexity itself is what will confound the situation. And also, we prolong growth at our peril. So I think that's the other thing is keep these in mind evaluating things.
Those aren't as funny as the two atoms, but it's a really good filter. I think it's easy to get wrapped up in the celebrity culture of someone like Elon Musk. It's easy to get wrapped up into these easy fixes, and so really trying to I don't know how you get those filters into your system, but really being able to read and listen and see these things with that.
Google Glasses. Google.
My Neuralink reminds me constantly of these.
That's right.
Damn it, I knew I wasn't going to get good answers to that question.
Well, I'm sure Elon was working on a solution to that problem, Rob. Doing the opposite of what I was talking about earlier, sort of the really bad dynamic of belief systems being reinforced by self-interest, that whole dynamic, right? And we've talked before about cognitive biases and sort of the traps that we can fall into. And so thinking about doing the opposite of that in ourselves would be making sure that we're exposed to different worldviews, right? Different information, different perspectives in our own lives. Because I think what tends to happen is that we fall into these traps of things being reinforced for us by the information that we're consuming or the people that we talk to.
The algorithms on the social media.
Yeah, and I think it's important, for all of us, to have that checked a little bit. And it reminds me a little, we talked, I don't remember what episode this was, we talked about hunter-gatherer tribes and when someone goes on a hunt and brings back a kill for the group.
An impala.
I think it was a porcupine in this.
Oh yeah,
the
porcupine. The porcupine. Yeah.
Specific
comes with
example.
Toothpicks built in for after the meal.
Fantastic. Yeah. Basically, the tendency is to poo-poo the kill.
Right.
It's not that good. It's a little gamey or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like. May we all have people who kind of check our...
Like the three of us do for each other all the time. That was a terrible analysis this year. Yeah. Absolutely terrible.
Thank you. I feel so much better now.
Well, I think this is really hard nowadays. We almost have this, our culture is slipping into sort of, illiberalism of tolerance, right? The idea that the other people, the other side is evil and they have bad intentions and you need to shame them or you need to cancel them. And I think that's really dangerous. And so I think figuring out how to broaden and have sensible conversations with people that you may disagree with, but also not dehumanize, I think is really critical.
Yeah, that probably means don't have that conversation on social media for one.
Well, and I would invite Elon Musk to embrace different views, in this case us, and send PCI a big fat check.
Yeah, exactly.
Show that you're open-minded, Elon.
Now, our friend Phil, he had this meme he was gathering together for Earth Day I thought was really good, so I want to share this. And it was this sort of fake press release, the idea being that planet Earth is announcing that the subsidy has been providing to human civilization, commonly known as fossil fuels, will be withdrawn over the next few decades. And the statement noted, this was always the plan. The original contract disclosed that the supply was finite and urged the humans to make wise use of this energy bonanza by building long-lasting, easily repairable infrastructure that would allow civilization to flourish using the ongoing energy flux from the sun. And I think that's really what we need to be doing is figuring out how we're going to use the remaining endowment we have and make things repairable, reusable, etc. So complete opposite, of course, of the Musk kind of technology and ideas.
Yeah, flies in the face of colonizing the supercluster. But look, maybe a parting final do the opposite would be enjoy looking up at the stars, be inspired, but don't spend most of your time trying to figure out how to get there and colonize them.
Okay.
Well, thanks for listening. If you made it this far, then maybe you actually like this show.
Yeah, and maybe you even consider yourself a real inhabitant of Crazy Town. Someone like us, who we affectionately call a Crazy Townee.
If that's the case, then there's one very simple thing you can do to help us out. Share the podcast, or even just this episode.
Yeah, text 3 people you know who you think would get a kick out of hearing from us bozos.
Or if you want to go way old school, then tell them about the podcast face to face.
Please, for the love of God, if enough people listen to this podcast, maybe one day we can all escape from Crazy Town. We're just asking for 3 people, a little bit of sharing. We can do this. The Boring Company and the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative have announced a strategic partnership called the East-West Mantle Penetrator Project. Up to now, human transport options to get from point A to point B have been limited to inefficiently moving along Earth's curvature. Not anymore. By this time next year, a vacuum tube will be constructed through Earth's mantle, moving in a purely linear rather than curvilinear manner, enabling spies, businessmen, and politicians to move between Washington, D.C. and Beijing in under 1 hour. The East-West Mantle Penetrator Project, accelerating the movement of madmen between continents through the center of the Earth.
Crazy Town, da 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 da, Crazy Town.